Welcome to Robson Radio, the official podcast of the University of Manitoba's Faculty of Law. Our goal is to share the stories of Western Canada's oldest law school, and we're honored to be doing so from the banks of the Red River, on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Inunuak, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oyate, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Today's podcast comes to you from the newly renovated Pitblado LLP boardroom at Robson Hall. My name is Allison Fenske, Clinical Counsel and Director of the University of Manitoba Community Law Centre, and I'm pleased to be co-hosting this episode with my Robson Hall colleague, Natasha Brown, Director of Access to Justice and Community Engagement.
Thanks, Allison. Today we have a very special guest, the Honourable Andromache Karakatsanis, Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. Justice Karakatsanis' law career began at the University of Toronto and Osgoode Hall Law School, and she was called to the bar in Ontario in 1982. She served as a law clerk to the Ontario Court of Appeal and then worked in private practice in the area of criminal, civil, and family litigation in Toronto for several years. She then served in the Ontario Public Service for 15 years in a number of senior positions. She was first appointed to the bench of the Ontario Superior Court of Justice in 2002. In 2010, she was appointed to the Ontario Court of Appeal, and in 2011, she was appointed to her current role as Judge of the Supreme Court of Canada. Welcome, Justice Karakatsanis, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us today about your insights on your career and the legal profession.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Natasha and Allison.
And so I guess maybe to start, since we're in our law school, what first drew you to the law? And did you imagine becoming a judge when you were in law school?
I am the daughter of immigrant, and growing up I knew that I had to be a professional. Didn't matter what profession, I just had to pick one. And since I was in the arts, I picked law. Seemed like the natural choice. But I'm not one of these people who always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I just went to law school and thoroughly enjoyed it. But to be a Supreme Court judge, it never occurred to me I'd be a judge, let alone a Supreme Court judge.
And how did that career path come to be then from your role in public service?
Well, I never had a grand plan. And so my journey is a somewhat unusual journey to the bench. I had started in criminal law and private practice after I clerked. I actually had wanted to be a Crown prosecutor, and that's the only job I applied for after I clerked for the Court of Appeal. I didn't get the job. I was devastated. I thought my career was over before it started. And yet, the reason why I like to tell young law students the story is 15 years later, I was back as the Deputy Attorney General, head of all the Crown prosecutors in the province. So you never know. What feels like a real disaster can turn out to be a real blessing in disguise. So I was in private practice. I was part-time a member of the Liquor License Board, and they asked me if I'd go and be a full-time vice chair to set up the hearing practice. So I did. I thought it was a leave of absence, but I never went back. It just, my career seemed to be a series of opportunities that just came up because I was in the right place at the right time. They were unusual, and they sounded interesting, so I said okay. So I try to tell young lawyers not to overplan things, because I think it's been my experience, and probably the experience of my colleagues as well, that the most interesting opportunities are not ones that we've sought out.
I would think Allison and I both agree to that with our own careers.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunities to go down different pathways,
Yeah.
and it's always interesting.
I never thought, for example, I was chair of the Liquor License Board, and I got a call to say, would you come and be Secretary for Native Affairs for Ontario?
That'd be quite the transition, I
Quite
imagine.
the transition. And so I thought, well, I love the art. I love the culture. I didn't know much, about about Indigenous law or Aboriginal law, but it turned out to be one of my favorite jobs ever.
I think that's a great jumping off point to one of the next questions I wanted to ask you, which you've talked about these different opportunities that you've had and seizing different moments presented to you in your career. What are some of the moments in your career that have most shaped how you see justice today?
That's a great question. Well, I think probably for me the most transformative experience occurred during law school. I spent a term at Parkdale Community Clinic. It was a poverty law clinic. And for someone who had grown up in a fairly sheltered life, in a really, in a loving, happy family, for me it was a real eye-opener. I was dealing primarily with child welfare cases and with what we called juvenile delinquents at the time. And I just heard stories and met people, and I thought that, in different circumstances that it could have been me. It was really, I think, transformative for me and made me see that there was always another reality that I might not understand or even be aware of. So that was probably the most transformative. But in terms of my view of justice now, I think it's just the diversity of the roles that I've played and the opportunity to see justice from so many different perspectives. As a tribunal member, an adjudicative in the administrative justice sphere, as deputy minister of justice, kind of responsible for the operation of the courts, for giving policy advice and, having to give advice to cabinet about whether the laws were constitutional or not. And then 3 different levels of court. You see that kind of real, you see really a huge range of human drama in the courtrooms. Justice is so immediate, and it's the people in front of you whose lives are going to be changed by your decision. And then at the Court of Appeal, it's a much more reflective. It's a system. It's you start to think about the law in a different way. So I think all of those experiences have really made me see justice both as a matter of deep principle and as systems of law that need to be coherent and, at the end of the day, just, but also they have to be practical. They have to work on the ground. The judge has to be able to apply the rules. People need to know what the law is. And so I think all of those experiences have really shaped my views on justice.
Yeah, I really appreciate you drawing on your experiences as a student at the Parkdale Legal Clinic. Our University of Manitoba Community Law Center is a partnership with Legal Aid, and so I think it's so interesting to hear you talk about the way that was such a transformational experience, because, in my own role, I know that to be so true for students. The more that they have the opportunities to serve people whose needs aren't being met by a lot of the social safety nets that we do have in place here in Canada, and to make sure that they're having meaningful access to legal services, does have that transformational impact. It's so interesting to hear you talk about the impact it had on you, so thank you.
No, and of course my sort of first connection with you was that I have the honor of working with you as chair of the Action Committee on Access to Justice, as it is now. There's a myriad of ways in which we can define or discuss access to justice, and we don't have one standard definition as to what that is. So what does access to justice mean to you within your role as chair of that committee?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and you're right, there isn't just one way to say it. I think at its most basic, I think a just society is one that allows people to live their best lives free of unjust barriers. And so, we tend to look at it from an institutional perspective. How do we make the process easier? How do we make, courts, tribunals more accessible? But I think access to justice starts with making the rules more accessible, the laws more accessible, preventing problems, teaching legal literacy, just finding so many different ways to help people avoid, prevent, and solve their legal problems. But it's we've talked about it as a people-centered justice. people at the heart of justice. I have to say, I've worked in justice throughout, my entire career, and I've always worked towards access to justice, but it wasn't until I started as chair of the Action Committee that I really understood that I had still always looked at it as a professional. And from the perspective of the professional and from the perspective of our institutions and our justice system, as opposed to just saying, most people want nothing to do with the justice system. They just want to live their lives in a way that, they don't have legal problems. Or if they do, there's just a very easy way to deal with it. So it's been a fabulous opportunity for me too, but I'm still trying to find that definition of what access to justice means. I'm starting to think of it much more as a common good, as a shared responsibility for society, and as something that we need to all really think of as one of the infrastructures of a just society.
And so when you think about that shared responsibility of us all when it comes to a functioning legal system and a just society, and you've talked about the people at the center of that, how can the legal profession better reflect the people in the society that it serves?
Well, in terms of better reflecting, I think we're starting to do a much better job. You just look around. I looked around the classroom, the moot court today, and the diversity. I didn't see that diversity when I was in school. I was considered the other, just because I had the Greek name and the Greek heritage. That was considered diversity, and that is just today. I think we have a much, much richer sense of that. So, starting with admissions to law school, starting with really creating opportunities within not just the school but within the profession for to value different kinds of experiences. I think we are doing a not bad job with the bench. We have more women, we have more visible minorities, and it'll take a while. But I think we have gone a long way towards valuing different kinds of experiences. There would have been a time when my credentials would not have been seen appropriate for the Supreme Court of Canada because I wasn't, I just hadn't been a litigator all my career. So I think that Canada has actually been quite good at seeing the opportunities and the richness of difference.
As someone who is racialized myself, I can say in my, graduating class, I could probably count on one hand the number of racialized students. And we're getting better. Like, a passion of mine is to make those numbers equivalent to Canadian society. We're not quite there yet, but it's better than when I went to school and better than when you went to school.
It is.
So.
And the challenge will be to keep that kind of diversity because the profession, loses a lot of people. So the private sector is going to have to do some work, I think, to attract and accommodate and retain young lawyers as well.
Yeah. Well, and I guess speaking of young lawyers and law students, what responsibility do today's law students have in shaping Canada's future, in your opinion?
Oh, they have a huge responsibility. They're so privileged to have the opportunity to have this kind of an education. They are our future. They are our future leaders. They are our future judges. They are our future professors. So they are going to be our future. So the question is how they shape it. And I think that kinds of discussions I've had with the students today, the kinds of questions that they asked, shows that they are deeply engaged, they are deeply worried, and they really want to make a difference. They really want to do the right thing. And I think that if those are the values that are driving them, they are going to shape the future in a way that will protect the values and the institutions that I think help make Canada one of the best countries in the world.
So what is it that gives you that hope about the next generation of lawyers and in terms of the students and young lawyers that we see today?
Well, that's why I love going to law schools to talk. I just get incredibly energized because they're so interested. They ask really tough questions, often questions I can't answer. I think they feel a sense of responsibility. I remember, this is a bit off topic, but I remember going to the law school in Iqaluit and meeting with students there who were just so worried because their communities were looking to them to solve all the problems of the future. And yet they were willing, and they were there for that reason. And of course it's nerve-wracking. But I don't know, every law school that I've been to, I've come away optimistic about our profession. They're engaged, they're interested, they're not afraid to ask hard questions. And they do come from so many diverse backgrounds that, we're going to have the benefit of all that richness as we move forward.
Thank you for that. We've talked a lot about what the future can look like for law students, for early careers lawyers. Federally appointed judges do have an age of mandatory retirement. Have you given any thought to what you think your continuing legal career could look like once you decide, that time for your judicial career to come to an end?
Okay, well, I've got another 5 years left if I stay right through to the end. And the truth is, I could have retired a very long time ago. Mm-hmm. And retired home to my family and grandchildren and kids. And the truth is that I find the job is extraordinary. The work is just so meaningful. It's it makes a difference sometimes to thousands, if not millions, of people, and so. It's a huge responsibility, and I just feel privileged to be able to play a role in that. I'm also grateful that I'm one of 9. That is just not my responsibility, but it's extraordinary work. So I take it year by year at this point, but I'm still as excited about the cases now as I was when I first started almost 15 years ago. So that's a pretty good sign.
Do you envision continuing to be involved with the Action Committee?
Oh yes, it's been a lot of work. As I think everybody who's involved in volunteer activities knows, that if you really care about the volunteer work you're doing, it becomes your second job. So I think that there's been a lot of interesting initiatives, and I think that there's an opportunity to kind of declare that phase 1 of access to justice is done. Like, everybody really does understand that we have a crisis in access to justice, and we need to think about it differently. So I think we're at a much more sophisticated second generation access to justice. So that's also very exciting.
You've talked about a lot of the different opportunities that you had in terms of your career to develop further understandings about, different issues that are facing Canadians, really about the kind of fabric of our society. Is there something that you wish you had known as a law student that you know now from the kind of years of experience that you have in the legal profession? Is there something that you would want to leave with law students as they start to embark on their careers?
That's always a difficult question for me, because I have to confess, I got married in second year. I did not take advantage of everything there is to take advantage of in a law school. It is a time when life is very exciting and there's just so much that students want to do in life. But looking back, I do wish I had taken more advantage of the opportunities that you have in a law school. It's one of those times in life when you can be actually quite self-centered and take advantage for your own benefit. And so I would say volunteer, do the extras, do the moots. I never did a moot. There's just, it almost sometimes feels to me that university's wasted on the young, but but just I guess I would just say take advantage, because it is this, it is a period in your life where you actually do get to focus on yourself, and everything you do is an investment in yourself for your entire future.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's evident from our conversation your deep commitment to the public service, to the rule of law, and to a functioning and just, as you've said it, legal system. So again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Allison, Natasha.
Thanks so much. Safe travels back to Ottawa.
And thank you for listening to Robson Radio.